Welcome, everybody. We are back. It is March. It feels like we just left off a couple weeks ago.
Because
right?
we did.
We did.
On March 1st, right, to kick off our March graded group update for Star Wars CCG. So welcome back, Luke and JP, as always. We are going to go right down the list here. We're going to talk about the past contest of February, which was everything gaming, pod racing, sabak, gambling, anything like that, right? And then our upcoming March contest, we're going to talk about PSA grading, CGC, the Star Wars CCG showing up on the Collecticon, upcoming shows, Facebook group updates, and wrap up with some sales stuff with Luke. So a lot to cover here, so we're going to get started right away. Not too many submissions. Am I right, JP?
You are correct, and not only that, this is the first time I had an opportunity to submit, but man, with sicknesses going around and stuff like that, I didn't get an opportunity. First time I haven't submitted, but yeah, the submissions were low.
Yeah, you can tell my voice isn't 100% either. There's another cougher in the house, and I managed to just clean up throw up over my newborn, which, Luke, you can appreciate.
Yes.
So things aren't exactly peachy rosy here, but we hope to be better soon. So let's start with lowball. So we had one lowball submission, our very own Luke Fritz here, holding it down in a super competitive category here, but an excellent submission, if I do say so myself, with an HGA custom slab of Through the Force Things You Will See, which is really cool because it shows up upside down. And Ord Mantell Japanese Hoth PSA 7. So clear winner there. Luke, you get to walk away with a Boba Fett PSA Reflection slab. So congratulations.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. I was really just going to put something out there, and I think the contest, try to just be as creative as possible, guys. It doesn't have. Lowball. You'll see JP will put some 9s out there and just have somebody try to beat it.
Yeah.
I was really scratching my head. I was like, how can I get this? And just try to get something on the board for somebody to kind of maybe compete with. But happy to take home the prize for lowball this month.
Yeah, he's getting a Boba Fett here, people.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's wake up. I don't know where everybody went, but surely people have low slabs out there. Maybe this was a difficult category.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. Yeah.
I don't know if people dug through their episode 1 stuff. There's usually a lot of gaming, gambling themed related stuff there. So congrats on that. JP, do you want to touch on Unique?
Yeah. Unique was a good category. Of course, Kyle, you had your submission, which we definitely have to shout out. HGA 9.0 Tatooine Pod Racer Arena and Anakin's Pod Racer. So really good coming through for the pod racing and gaming. But the winner is Cole Duncan. He had PSA 10. This was a sealed box topper of hand with his heavy blaster, which is awesome. That's a super great
really
submission.
Cool.
And
really cool.
PSA 9 Leia's sporting blaster too, which is really cool. So those were great submissions. Good job and congratulations, Cole.
Again, love the creativity. Gaming. The sporting blaster. Come on.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. So Cole walks away with a BGS 9 Lone Warrior Black Border English slab. So congrats on that, Cole. We'll get that out in the mail for you. And our one and only submission for top. No, we had two. Excuse me. We had two.
It was a close second.
Very close second. I know Sam had a good a second place submission there. Ultimately, he knew that Cam's submission of the tournament foils of what was it? SGC 10 and SGC 9.5 of Hujix and Grick. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they're both tournament foils too. Foil.
Yeah, so, tournament foils, which is pretty cool. Can't top that. So that's a pretty cool category. Congrats, Cam. We'll be sending you your Reflections to Foil Simalu. Congrats on that. Good submission too, Sam, as well. But I'm hoping that we get more submissions in general for next month. March is going to be foil locations or planets. So I'm hoping, but I bet you we're going to see like, what is it? The hyper route, or what's that foil? Hyper, what's rendezvous point, right?
Oh,
so like that's a good one,
that's a good one,
right? I have a Yoda's hut in foil. I'm sure people got foil stuff in here somewhere. So I want to see a better showing of foil locations for March.
I have 0 foil locations or planets, so I'm definitely not winning any of the categories this time.
But if you wanted to find one, I'm sure you could get one under
That's
10
true.
bucks.
That's right. I could.
Online.
Yeah.
right now, and win in a low ball category, which would be even better because you can probably get one for a couple bucks. Like at a 99-cent auction, you can win a PSA 5 nonsense that somebody's trying to get rid of. Okay, so let's move on. PSA grading has updated their grading standards I saw this was posted, but I did read this as well. PSA sent out a notification that they're going to be tighter on centering specifically. 45-55 has to be honored in order to get a 10. I guess before they were a little more lax on that, which does make sense. I have seen some 10s that I'm like, this isn't centered. I'm like, I never would have thought it would got it a 10, right? But now we're hearing people that might be skeptical if they're just getting more stringent in general with their grading. We have yet to see that on a large scale. I don't think one return personally is going to change that. Like we get some graders, 1 or 2, maybe they're really strict on one, but this company has lots of graders, right? And they're going to, unfortunately have their own biases and backgrounds on this, and some are going to be loosey-goosey. It's the same reason one return you might get is amazing and another one is trash, right? So unless you're getting like a bunch of them back, right, which we won't really know until returns come back over the next few months, and we'll be able to watch these returns, kind of like I think Cole had shared his return, which wasn't ideal. Like I've shared some of my recent Lorcana returns. But again, that doesn't tell me that much. I would still subject that based on the graders themselves. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've seen anything of that, or if you think that's going to make a difference.
Well, I always like to keep a positive attitude towards grading all the time. I've had just too much success at it, but again, I put so much effort into the inspection that if anything just looks off slightly, it just goes back. I put it in a box that's ungradable. So it's always creme de la creme, because if I see it, they're definitely going to see it. So it's not like let me try to sneak this in. So I've just I monitor the site all the time in people's returns, and sometimes it's mixed, and I don't know what to say, but there are people that are like, oh my gosh, this is my 3rd return. My grader just must be going through a divorce right now and just hating the world.
Yeah, we've all heard that.
All these excuses about why their return is so bad. But that's the nature. That's the hobby, is the chase of getting your cards graded and having the best quality collection you can have. So that's my take.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because, well, before you jump in, Luke, I was going to say, if you're going to be like changing standards of grading, then wouldn't it be fair to be like, I'm going to judge standards of grading from like cards of a certain year forward? Like if I'm going to be AI strict on it, or I'm going to be tighter on something, wouldn't it be more advantageous to say we're going to respect and honor the grades that are for the grading standards we had on X cards, right? But moving forward, 2024 on cards need to be fulfilling a deeper, strenuous, sort of rigorous, whatever grading standards, so that you can really get to, is this a true 10 or not, right? Because the quality of cards in general have been better. And maybe this will lead people to consider grading other places, but I don't know. Where were you going to go, Luke?
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that. My thought on this, thinking about like the market here, is what does this do to the value of PSA 10s from Star Wars CCG, which are clearly off center? So the one I can think of right off the top, they're like just a couple years ago, the first PSA 10 Leia Organa from Premier Limited came out, not Japanese, and Cam bought it. And I remember him expressing some dissatisfaction on the back, not the front, but the back he felt like was off center. and be like, it's a PSA 10. It's gonna be that.
Right.
I wonder in the future, like as you said, if they're going to go backwards, and now every lay organa that is looked at the centering has to be perfect. Does this make the value? I don't know. What does it make the value of a?
It's a valid question. It's a very valid question, because even if you say, okay, I'm going to submit a Leia now, we can see that the grading number is higher, right? So we know at some point the numbers. I think they've exceeded past the next.
That's right. They're on the next digit. One.
Yeah, they're one more digit past, right? So it's pretty safe to say, like, after that digit, like, is probably when this sort of change happened. Right? Like, are we going to say, like, oh, if it out of 10 and the digit is higher, then it is an actual 10, right? Versus like this BS 10. Now I've seen, I'm not saying it's BS, but like a less strict 10, right? I mean, and that this is what BGS was dealing with before. They were changing their grading standards and all that. And then people got annoyed or really upset over the fact that, like, well, what are the value of my cards now if they're going to grade different? Like, if you were going to give me a 10 now or then, or a 9.5 now or then, right? And it goes this back and forth, because this does have impacts, right? Like, especially for the high value cards, like, that is significant. And some people actually care about the true centering of the card, right? Like, they want to know, like, this is a gem example of this card. Like, you could slap a 10 on something and it could look ugly and not be right, and people would be upset about that, right? Like, they wouldn't say, like, this is not a 10 I want, right? And other people might crack that, send it to somewhere more strict, like a tag or maybe a CGC or somewhere else that would have that 9.5 to see would it actually get the 10 or not. What are your thoughts on this, JP? You feel like you got something to say?
For sure. I mean, I've had conversations with Mark, and I think with Andy as well, that even the other gaming cards, Pokemon and Magic, people are not leaning towards what the label says. They want to see what the card looks like. So they look past the slab and they examine the card as well, regardless of what the grade is. So it may be getting to the point that there are so many Star Wars CCG graded cards that collectors and showcasers are just going to really just be taking a look at the card, because, I mean, over the past year or two, I've seen some of our group members, they've called it out and pointed out, and they're like, look, here's a printing imperfection. Here's like a chip. And they said, I don't know how this got a 9. And, so over the years, people have already started examining the cards inside the slab and kind of disregard some of the labels. So it may be where the industry or that particular grading service is actually catching up to what all the collectors and people are seeing and saying, that, it's got to have a standard. And if it's not a high standard, then you can't be grading cards to high levels that have all kinds of problems. So, but I remember having this conversation with, I think, Mark and Andy a couple of years ago about how the other cards, people just really look at the card and they don't care about what the label says.
And this is where, like, an advantage of a newer or lesser known company comes into play, because they have the flexibility to adapt newer technology and standards that are going to, be of a more precise sort of thing, right? Like this tag element we were talking about last time, where they just hyper blow it up, change the inverted colors, have this whole number system, and have that transparency. Like, if PSA or even BGS or one of those legacy graders decides to completely change their grading system, it makes people go berserk, because now what do you do with the values? To Luke's point earlier, like, what does this do with that? And that's a huge disadvantage of being, like, the incumbent, right? Like, the legacy sort of elephant in the room is just like, what is all this stuff worth? Now, personally, as a collector, mostly, right? Like, some of these will go up and down. I had some cards that, like, I could have resubmitted from 9.5s to 10s, like, when they were doing this up and down. I'm like, I don't care. I was like, I just like the way it looks where it is. It's just gonna collect dust on my shelf. Like, that's fine for me. But for those that are, like, buying and selling and trading this and selling this stuff all the time, like, yeah, there would be some alarm bells going off in my head. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? A lot to talk about. I'd love to hear comments or more discussion on this after we post this. I'm sure a lot of people have thoughts on this, but let's plow forward. I did see Michael Lockwood posted that Star Wars CCG showed up on under the Star Wars category on Collecticon for the promo material, which was a first, I believe. Now, as Andy and I had went to Collecticon, it was mostly Pokemon, right? Like I'd be actually surprised if we went there and found Star Wars CCG or Decipher products there in general. Yeah. But it is interesting that they chose to include that in there. You know, is this because they've seen an uptick in, or they've seen it like, have we reached a threshold of enough graded Star Wars CCG cards that they feel like, oh, this is like a target group. Like this is people that are consistently sending in cards, buying and selling and trading and grading or whatever, right? Like, have we reached that threshold? Like, are we like, okay, we can add this in here? Because personally, like if they're not showing up at shows, then like I don't know the point of why you would add that to marketing. Or if you're just like, just pick maybe we just got lucky, right? Maybe they're just like, oh, this is a Star Wars graded card, like just throw it up there with the ad, you know, like.
They did choose the Darth Maul Young Apprentice. Like they chose like one of the most valuable Star Wars CCG graded
right cards. And that says something. If they chose something that was like, well, this is we know this one has value, why don't you slap this up there and get people's attention, right? Like I don't know. Like I have questions.
Well, true. And so it's on the front page. So if you scroll all the way down, it looks like these are all custom photos. So it's not like they took it off of eBay or from somebody. So either one of the coordinators or vendors or somebody, you know, somebody put out both the tops and the Star Wars CCG card together. But that's all that was represented for graded Star Wars stuff. So I feel good about it. And we'll just see how it goes. I mean, I'll have an update here in a minute about the past show and then what I got cooking. So it's going to be nice.
Yes, I do want to chat about that. I before we do, I was going to say, at least when I was looking up Star Wars cards, like in the registry, right? Like just seeing like what's out there, like there's bits and pieces of other sets out there. Like there's the Wonder Bread set, there's the classic, you know, 77 sets or whatever. Like, but when it comes to a lot of the newer stuff, there's not really many sets out there. And if they are, they're very patchy or like barely any participation in there. Like I would argue that the Star Wars CCG for the most part, I mean, Star Wars Unlimited is popping in there a little bit, but I think as this evolves, in my mind, Star Wars Unlimited is almost more like trying to grade a board game or something, or card game. Like to me, it doesn't make as much sense. I don't know. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole per se, but I feel like Star Wars CCG has the best potential to represent that, you know, as a Star Wars category for graded, like let's showcase this group of people, right? I don't know. I'd love to hear other thoughts on that, unless I'm wrong. But like, I was going to submit my Topps Galaxy cards, right? And I was like, oh, surely there's a registry on here because they have them all. But like, there's not. You know, like if I'm grading all to 150s, 99s, or a color set or something, like there's like one or two patchy things in there, but they're not in there. I'm like, that's wild to me. Like that's new. It's registered, it's well known. It was super popular, but like there's not much demand for that. I guess people are grading it, but they're not doing sets or they're selling them off. But I have no idea.
I mean, let's face it. We're nearing 1,000 people just in our group. If just half of them are grading, just half of the group, I mean, you're talking thousands. I mean, we don't really know unless we just sit and go through everybody's population report. I know we're going to talk about CGC, excuse me, and so I'm thinking there's probably more out there than what I think. And I think it's, you know, if you're a collector of any of the gaming, you have to know Star Wars CCG has got some part of the market, and it's all over eBay. That's probably the largest of the Star Wars gaming cards that's out there. So
exciting times.
Their value, you see them. They're always running pretty much high dollar. I know Luke will give us an update here for February, but you know, let's face it, it's out there, and the industry is holding pretty strong, and it's still having good value. So you can't dismiss it.
You're right. So I wanted to get continuing this conversation. I wanted to jump into the CGC thing. I know, Luke, you had some thoughts on this. We had talked a little bit about this last time. I took a peek myself because I was like, okay, well, how much is this going to cost to grade? Looks like it's $12 a card to submit with that. So I've been lining up some cards of what I want to submit with them. But what were your thoughts on this, Luke? I know you wanted.
Well, this is going to get to the market update because I think it's pretty obvious that CGC is making a clear case for the number 2 spot here with Star Wars CCG. Yeah, I'll go ahead and just reveal something I think that's a really interesting fact. So out of the top 10 sales in February, please guess how many were CGC?
Of the top 10 sales?
Top 10 overall Star Wars CCG sales, how many are CGC?
3?
7.
Wow.
7 out of 10.
Oh, man.
So,
wow.
And PSA year over year is like 92, 93% of all the track sales we have. So to me, something's happening here where, and it's not just one seller. There's multiple new like offerings for CGC cards. Like Cam, this doesn't even count on the top 10, right? Like Cam, like partnered with a seller, kind of offline, and bought a Boba Fett special edition CGC 10, a Commander Luke Skywalker CGC 10, and a Ben Kenobi special edition CGC 10 as a lot, which again doesn't count towards a single card grade. Right, that was also in February. That doesn't count towards the 7. I mean, we saw Amara Jade Reflections to Ultra Rare Foil CGC 10. Those cards clearly have value. I don't know if they're going to see a lot more on the market as people, pivot to or see CGC as a company that, is going to offer you a little lower price point, a little bit more return or whatever. But to me, that's a pretty interesting inroad that hasn't, PSA has been just so dominant here for so long. To have CGC get a majority of the top sales for Star Wars CCG in a month. Now, again, I'll talk more about this in the market update overview. It was a down month, sure. Less data points, less sales, all that. I just thought that was interesting, guys. I don't know what you thought about that.
Well, given the fact that any of those cards could have gotten a 9.5, right? Because CGC will do a 9.5, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I think it passes that threshold of like, okay, it crossed better than a 9.5. Whereas with PSA, if it would have gotten a 9.5, they just give it a 10.
But out of the top 10, let me just read you real quick. Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight CGC 9. Mara Jade The Emperor's Hand CGC 10. Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight CGC 8.5. Luke Skywalker Reflections Foil CGC 9. Emperor Palpatine Death Star 2 CGC 8.5. Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight Death Star 2 CGC 7. And then another Commander Luke Skywalker CGC 10. So there's only 2 CGC 10s out of the top 10 that over sales over the last month, and CGC 7 is in there. These are Luke Skywalker Jedi Knights. Like, obviously, if people are going to be grading Luke Skywalker Jedi Knights, people are going to pay a lot for those because that's a premium card. But it's not just the gem mint. It's we have like demand for just your run of the mill 7 or 8 of ultra rare.
Well, let me ask this though. For the collectors that are looking for these key players, right? Like your Darth Maul, your Luke and Vader and all that, they're not going for sets, right? Then they would probably want, like, if I want the true gem, the best version, then it is worth looking for. Well, what company is going to be fairly scrutinized and tight, good looking slab, but well respected and like can't do any better, right? Like we know BGS has the 9.5s and they give the subgrades, right? So we can get critical with that. CGC does 9.5, SGC does, but SGC hasn't really gained as much traction with this particular group, right? I think they look good with, especially those black and white cards, so like the white border cards and stuff. I think it looks really good. But yeah, as a set collector, like I can't ignore that there's like a set registry available for some of these things, and I like to compete that way. So like for at least for the Japanese Premier and the Reflections one foil set, I kind of passively compete with. I like to be able to post it there, but I will say if I were to like do another set or something like that, maybe I would entertain doing it in something like a CGC. Especially if that price point stays better, like 12 is definitely way better than paying the $16.99 for cards that are worth like $50, you know? And after shipping and insurance and like the turnaround nonsense, you're basically paying like almost $25 a card, which is brutal when you're trying to complete a set for a common card and it comes back in 8 and it's broken in the freaking box. And you're like, what?
Tell that you have some personal experience here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Let's get customer care on.
You know, but it's right like, oh, it's brutal. You know, like you get some 10s, like it offsets that. So I'm trying to justify that in my head, but
again, I wonder if this goes back to the conversation about like PSA centering. Is PSA just seen as not worth it? Yes, okay. If you get a 10, you're gonna get a lot of money back, or that's a great return, whatever. But because they're being more stringent, because it's a hassle, because it costs a lot, you're going to lose out on some with CGC. But you still get a CGC 10, like, card's worth a lot of money still.
Well, the slabs, we cannot deny the SGC slab looks better than the PSA slab. I frankly am not in love with the PSA slab. I've just accepted the fact that this is what the group wanted. So I guess this is where we're going. But I'm glad that we're open to the idea that there are other things in here and other players in here. And, you know, I'm glad we're trying to enter, you know, level the playing field a little bit. But again, like if SGC is, when did they start doing grading cards? Do you guys know?
I don't. I just did my first return, so I don't know what the history is.
But they haven't been doing this,
might.
Right? Yeah. Now I kind of want to know.
Yep. But again, we just started recently tracking this too, so we're talking about it. People are seeing it more in the group. It feels like more like a PMO for these cards coming out, and people are like, well, you know, they're getting to be so expensive to get PSA 10s that maybe I need to get on, you know, get in the basement of the CGCs and just load up on the stars that are high grades.
Oh,
get them while they're cheap.
July 2020. That's what it says. New CGC trading card website live. Is that what? That can't be right. Is that right? Anyways, doesn't have the same history. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's, you know, just because we're starting to bring attention to it, more people in the group, you know, and you know, there are people that are collectors that they just want to put their cards in slabs and just do it the cheapest that they can. And as long as, you know, SGC and CGC keep it around $12, that's going to be more appetizing. People can get a lot more of their card, more bang for their buck. PSA is really starting to get up there, and you know, it's all supply and demand. If people are still going to use PSA, they're just going to continue on their ways. And like Luke pointed out, that when you hit those 10s, you're going to get a good return. But again, you're like, you know, you get those 6s and 7s back, and of course you got the grading tech where his cat died this morning, and I can't just cope with the world, and so I'm going to just destroy somebody's submission. So.
I will say I did see some very low CGC sales this week or this month as well. There's like a white border Luke from the Premier 2-player set. It was like a CGC 6 that sold for like $5.
Well, it's not a great grade, and it's a fairly
of course it's not a great grade, not a great card. The cards that we're selling for a lot are like really premium cards. But like you said, if you start grading the commons, the less premium cards, and get bad grades, like maybe CGC will start be seen as, okay, we're not getting much value out of this. It's only the super high value. Like that's just the general thing in Star Wars CCG graded. Like there are a few cards that no matter who they're graded with will always have value. Like Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, Darth Maul Young Apprentice, that super rare tournament foils. Like we know, right?
Right.
But yeah, if it's cheaper and easier to grade with CGC to get those like return, if you just randomly happen to find a really good copy of your Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, to me it makes sense.
Okay, so I want to get to, before we get to some of the sales update stuff, I just want to get around the horn with shows. I know, JP, you were going to tell us, had some little snafu with shows, but there's some more coming up, as well as the Facebook group general update on how things are looking with group members, all that.
And that'll be super quick. We haven't had much going on in the group for the entire month of February. We've only had just a few people join, which is kind of understandable. We're going to have those months, but we're going to track it through and then maybe throw out some fun stuff too to kind of get people interested. And you know, we're always kind of, I don't want to say lurking, but we're always looking for opportunities in the other Star Wars CCG groups to where, hey, you know, come check out what's going on in the graded group. So we usually get 5 or 10 people just from those opportunities, but not much going on in the group. We've done pretty good. No real scammers. The previous January, we had 2 or 3 people that tried to pop in there and steal pictures and sell, but February was pretty calm and safe. But yeah, back to the Collecticon, you know, that was great to see the card show up on their homepage for that show. But I had a show that was in February. Well, the weather was really poor. Kansas City got hit, of course, with that Arctic blast. And I was actually just leaving Springfield on my way to Kansas City and got a call that they canceled the show. There was a main that burst, a main line, and the facility, the venue flooded. They didn't have running water, so there's no bathrooms, and so they just canceled. And you can't just quickly put together and say, hey, next weekend, same thing, we're going to have it all fixed. So I just decided to pull out. But of course, I'm doing this with my sons, and my son has already booked us for a 450 vendor table show in Kansas City.
Wow.
Again. It's big. Large. In fact, they can't even do it 2 days. It's a 3-day event. I'm going to put the link. It's got a huge link. So I'm going to go ahead and put everything down in below in the communication. So you'll have all that stuff for those people that are in the area. It's called KC Royalty. It's at Sheridan at Crown Center. And it's one of the largest card shows that they have. And you have to pick, like, do you want the first 125 tables that's by the entrance? Do you want one of the 250 that's in the middle? Or do you want one of the 150 that's in the back? Now, I don't remember the last time I've been to a show that's got more than like 250 tables. So this is going to be huge.
Yeah,
and we both got our own tables. And again, I'm going to be showcasing nothing but Star Wars CCG cards, graded, packs, sealed, loose. So it's going to be mostly promoting our group, Star Wars CCG graded, but I really want the cards out there for people to get exposed to it and, you know, have the Midwest. If these big shows are going to, you know, continue to grow, then I think we need to have a place at the table.
You got to have a QR code to join the group, like right on your table or something. Scan this, join the Facebook group.
Yep. I've got that. So I've got all, awesome. In fact, I'm still packed up. If I can, I would turn the camera to show you just off camera here. I've got boxes still packed up and all my paperwork and things in, you know, envelopes. So it's all, you know, cause I was ready to go in May. But that was only going to be like 35 or 40 tables, which is not bad, but 450 tables, it's going to be out of this world, and I'm going to record it. So again, it'll be like streamed. I'll either play it for one of our updates or just throw it out there, just promote the group. And then again, of course, anything I sell, Luke, I'll keep track of and get it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, get some pictures. Any videos. Satisfied new collectors out there? Yeah, love to hear from
And
that.
if I find tables too, so I may get there. I mean, something that big, I'm bound to find some graded Star Wars CCG. I might not be the only one there. It'd be good to kind of like corner the market and people are like, hey, check this out. Why is that $100? But there may be other tables where there's somebody else doing the same thing. They're not trying to showcase. They're just trying to say, hey, this is worth some money and you can buy it from me.
And I would also say too, we get kind of caught up in our little Facebook bubble, but it's safe to say like there's definitely collectors out there and players out there that like don't use Facebook, or even YouTube for that matter. I mean, YouTube you can kind of just check out, right? But for those that are buying these things at eBay but are not plugged into Facebook group or aware of these YouTube videos for whatever reason, right? Like those people might want to be tuned in, and you can fill them in. And I'd love to hear from some of their perspectives, right? Like, because there's definitely an appetite for people buying on eBay that personally I've never seen, in Facebook or whatever, right? So they do exist, right? It's so easy to be like, oh, we're all here, right? Like it's all on Facebook, but like there's plenty of people that don't use Facebook, right? We're just in our little 30s to 50s something year old bubble, right?
Right.
All right, so that's awesome news. We got the updates. We're at like 917 members, I think, right now.
917 as of 15. What we've been running for almost 40 minutes, about an hour ago.
So I'm thinking at 1,000. I think I might crack maybe one of the premier starter English starter boxes, and then just send off to grade like all the rares and uncommon ones or something. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. I don't know if that would be interesting for anybody, but there's definitely people collecting the premier Black Border English set, right? Looking for good grades. So I don't even know if I would submit that with PSA or somebody else, but maybe that could be a whole point of discussion, but that could be fun.
Yep. We'll definitely be doing something. I mean, we're closing in on it. Just that gap from like between 500 and 900 seemed to go super quick. So it's going to be a great, a great number to hit.
Yeah, it's going to hit this year. We're very close.
Yeah, it's definitely going to.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. All right, so let's wrap this up. Luke, I'm going to give you the floor. Share with us everything sales and blow us away with your numbers.
Yeah, with your numbers. All right. Well, great. Use the force, Luke.
No pressure.
Okay. Cool. Well, I posted this actually shortly ago on the Facebook group. We were just talking about this. I realized that not everyone watching on YouTube is a part of this. So I did want to obviously just share a little bit about the data on this last month. And so February 2025, there was 112 sales that were tracked of graded Star Wars CCG singles. However, important to note, 37 of the 112 were one person. Brian Emery was selling like extra slabs on Facebook, and he just reported them to me privately. So like, yeah, that's great for Brian. And we got a lot of data points there, but like the actual number of like eBay publicly available off Facebook sales was way off. That compares to 109 in January. So about the same overall, 112 to 109 in January. But December was 200. So it's about half of what we saw in December. Sales, like actual volume, was 6,000. January was 10,000. December was 11. February of last year was 10,000. So like the story here is February 2025 was a very weak month, guys. Not only was volume down, average prices were down. Average sale was 56. January was 96. If December's average sale was also 56, but like they had way more sales, it was double the number of sales. So yeah, having both few sales and lower is an interesting, dynamic. I wrote this as a comment on the Facebook group, but as someone who looks at this every day, actually usually multiple times a day when I have the chance to, there would be multiple day periods within the month of February where there are no graded sales. And that is very unusual. Since I was brought on August 2023, I don't know if it's a time of year thing, if it's a lot of people worried, federal workers in particular right now, the first month of the new administration. I don't know what it is, but like there's clearly something happening in the market. And it is a down time of year. Are people waiting for May and May the 4th and all of that? Is, was it that February has Super Bowl Sunday and people were not wanting to put stuff up at that time? It only has 4 Sundays. March, this upcoming month, has 5. Tomorrow is the first Sunday of March, excuse me. And so we have more of those really high volume auction days. I don't know. I'm curious on seeing what comes up next here in terms of graded sales data.
I have some thoughts, but
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle. Before I move on, there's something else I want to talk about, but go ahead.
No, I want to hear what JP thoughts on that. I do have thoughts on this, though.
Yeah, so my thought is, isn't this the first winter season that there was no Star Wars shows, nothing to keep people's heads into Star Wars? Because over the past several years, there's always been something in December and January where, even though if the show was terrible, but there were people that were still talking about it and their heads were in Star Wars. So I think this has been the first winter season that there have not been any shows, anything to keep people kind of driven into, hey, I'm a Star Wars fan and I want to buy Star Wars stuff.
Well, Skeleton Crew, when did that end?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
But I think a lot of people didn't even know that existed, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, so that released December 2nd. So that
was very like Star Wars adjacent. That wasn't like even that show itself.
Well, they did like zero marketing for it, right? Like,
but it's not like that connected to the trilogy or like
not at all.
How you would? Oh yeah, that had Boba Fett or what? Like Mandalorian. Like those are the characters I knew. Yeah. Oh yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't that. And Andor is coming out
April. Yeah, and so that's a good point.
Very soon. That is going to be. I'm sorry.
That's going to be.
Everybody is excited about Andor. If you don't like Andor, oh man.
Yeah, it's good.
But getting back to our point, we can certainly go into that. I was going to say, so for example, I was like, you know what? I'm going to revisit my Reflections foil set. Let me just poke around, see what's available on eBay for Reflections foil slabs, right? I was shocked to find that like anything out there, like the cheapest like PSA 9 or something was like, buy it now, and it's like 90, 100, 200 bucks. Like people are asking these crazy prices. Like there's no 99-cent auctions or even anything really auctions. If they are, it's like really obscure. And I'm like, what happened when we were doing like these usual like 99-cent auctions? I think people are scared to do that anymore. There's some people have been burned on those. I personally have sold cards for 99 cents that were 9s or better, right? Like it is what it is, right? Like I guess nobody was paying attention or nobody wanted it, but these buy it now prices, some of them are absolutely outrageous. I'm sorry to say, but like they're almost like either go F off price or like I think it's worth this, so I think I'm just going to leave it here until somebody pays it. But then something sits there for a long time, and like as somebody who's just looking to fill set, I'm like, that's not worth it. It would be more worth it for me to go buy Reflections packs and grade them than the price you're asking for.
Right.
To be perfectly honest, like why would I do that when I could take a gamble myself for the same price? So I don't know if people are stuck with their heads in the clouds, or maybe they've seen enough of this data where they think that, oh, well, this got this price, so I couldn't accept anything less than like 10 or 20% more than that. I don't know. I think a lot of the cards just aren't worth as much as people want to believe they are. I mean, certainly the top player cards are, right? Like your Lukes and Vaders, but for all the other random stuff out there, I mean, how many people are looking for this? Like, I'd love to complete the set, but I'm not going to pay up the wazoo for it. I'd rather just rip it myself at that point. But if you're going to put up, like I bought a Death Star Plans foil PSA 9 for $50, I think. Like, I was like, okay, this is pretty high, but I was like, you know what, whatever. I was like, I'll just get it, right? Like, I think I was eyeing a U3PO at one point, like a 9, because I have an 8, and it was like $50 or $60. I'm like, okay, like for shits and giggles. But if there were more of them at like $30, $40 or at auction, maybe I'd be more inclined to like see where we're going with those. But not encouraging, and there's some slabs we've seen on eBay. We've seen some slabs that have been posted there for years.
Yeah.
Like they're just at F off prices, fine. It's their slab, right? Like they can do whatever they want. But it's not going to sell at that price.
I would say it's probably somewhat rare to have that price there without a best offer attached to it. When I see the actual sales data, it is very rare to see a high buy it now price actually purchased at that. Most of the time what's happening is the sellers know that's like a, hey, talk to me about this price, and it'll come in 20% underneath that. Now, it's true. Some of the sellers just have it there to kind of just show off, or like, hey, I'm not going to sell this unless you give me this price, which, okay, they can do that and they'll stay up for years. But for the most part, when you look at actual sales data, they're not getting what their, advertised prices there. It is a opportunity to start to negotiate, I feel like, without having the pressure of having people see the auction within the week that it's live. If you have a high buy it now price, it's like hey, it just sticks on eBay until someone is interested in a Death Star Plans PSA 9 foil, in which case then I will open a negotiation and talk to them about it. I don't know if there's, I don't know if that's a better or worse way to do it. I just think that that's probably what's happening.
I hear you with some of those. There's not best offers on all of them. But I poke around, I look through them, but I'm just like, like not worth it. Like at the moment, like I don't know. Maybe it is for somebody, but
the other thing I wanted to quickly shout out, the top sale, February 2025. I always try to do that. A Japanese premiere Darth Vader PSA 8 went for $620 on eBay. So that was our champ for the month. Final thing I wanted to talk about real quick, another shout out or advertisement for the group. Lots of times as I am perusing the data and looking at 130 Point and eBay's product research, I'll come across what I find is pretty interesting lower sales. And then I will click on that sales point, that seller, and be like, oh, do they have any more of these available? Because that was pretty low. And if they do, I've taken to starting to alert the group. And I really wanted to, I thought this was quite interesting. The other day, there was a Premier Unlimited sale box, an unlimited booster box that went for $200. The average price over the last year was $264. So someone saved about $64 under, what you typically would pay over the last year. Then, so I noted that and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Then a couple days later, a sale came in, same seller, same exact title, $155. And I was like, okay, that's $100 off the last sale.
Was it mislabeled? Year. Was it just not labeled well?
It was not labeled well. Yeah. Looking at it now, I'm looking at it again. I don't know.
Star
I think
Wars
people
game box.
Yeah,
thing.
Something like that. Those are the search criteria. I have a lot of search criteria, guys, and I'm looking at.
I bet.
Just tracking on the most random stuff, as you guys know. But anyways, I alerted the graded group and said, hey, it looks like the seller has at least one more of these. And they just accepted 2 offers at $200 and $155. Give it a shot. Like, I'm not interested in a Premier Unlimited box. I not needing to click that. But then I kept seeing the 130 Point sales come in as people from the graded group popped on this right away. And then the following data points came in: 100, 150, 125. Like all in a couple hour span. So people jumped on this.
Somebody found them like in a storage unit or something. Listed them up.
There was like 5 or 6 of them. Maybe it was a case that this person had. And I was like, I just want to get rid of these. People are giving me offers. Awesome. So someone got a Premier Unlimited box for $100. There's $164 off what the average of the last year was. So in any case, when I see those sorts of things, I try to let people know in the group. And so stay tuned. If there's something along those lines, the sets of the most volumes, right, are Premiere, A New Hope. Sometimes, Cloud City, Jabba's Palace, there's sometimes boxes that are up for pretty cheap. So those are the sorts of things that I'll see and be like, hey, if anyone's interested, like, this is way off, and like, go get it. But I thought that was kind of fun to see the group profit from some knowledge there.
Great.
Always
Thank you,
Luke. That. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the best option for them to get best grades too, to open up fresh.
For sure. Yeah. And
sealed products.
A direct correlated graded is sealed. And that's the reason why Cam and Mark have me on the tracker, right? It's like, hey, if you buy this sealed product, if you want to open it to get good grades, like, that's the best possible way to get clean cards. Have never been handled before.
Absolutely.
Well, any other final thoughts before we wrap up here? Interesting month, but hoping to see more continued sales as we re-engage here for the month of March.
Now looking forward to March. Curious what holds for us.
Good stuff, guys. Well, appreciate your time as always. Thank you, Luke. JP, be sure to share with us the link so we can add that into the YouTube video, and of course, put it in the Facebook group for those that are following. And yeah, thank you all for joining, and we'll chat next month.
All right, guys, take care.